right, welcome to Implicating the Real. My name is Michael. I'm joined as always by my good friend Joe. Joe, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good morning, good. And we're joined by our good friend Liana. Liana, how are you?
Great.
Great, good to have you. Today we're doing chapter 12 of Seth Speaks, The Eternal Validity of the Soul. The title of this, or the subtitle of this chapter, is Reincarnational Relationships.
Has Seth been giving us subtitles? Is this the first time we got a subtitle?
Well, maybe that's actually not a subtitle, because unless the chapter 12 is just the title. I mean,
No, like in the thing, it says like, here. All right, here's the first lines of the chapter are, good evening, and good evening to my traveling friends. We're going to begin our next chapter to be called Reincarnational Relationships. So Seth actually sat down like, hey, this one gets a title.
Other ones have had titles, right?
I'm looking back. Chapter 11 has a title under it.
Yeah, but like you're saying, we don't see that in the text of his words. I wonder if they just include it every once in a while. I know, like, they've talked sometimes about, like, sometimes they just include and then Seth says to underline this word. Sometimes they leave that in and sometimes they take it out. But they just leave in every once in a while just to, like, remind the viewer or the reader that this is kind of what's happening all the time.
Yeah. I assumed it might be just because, like, for this chapter, we've got, like, an audience, right? Because we've got Carl and Sue, are they?
Yeah, could be. Just give them a heads up.
Give them a heads up, like, this is what we're going to be talking about.
Didn't give any of their entity names, at least in what we have here.
Oh, because Seth usually calls them by their entity names, right?
Yeah, there's possibly some deleted, parentheticals where he talks about it, but a lot of times, when someone visits, I think part of the session gets diverted into the personal sessions or the deleted sessions.
Right.
So, I mean, we could actually look it up. But, what'd you guys think of this one?
Hate's bad.
Yeah, but not so bad that you should hate it.
Right. Don't hate, but also don't hate. I feel like that was there was a lot of pages on that. Like, it was really like, don't hate, don't hate, don't hate.
Yeah, I think it gets as much attention as Seth probably thinks some people need it. Like, I think some people need to hear that. I think it's pretty enlightening just to go through how he outlines it.
I think it was also just a different time. Hate might have been a little more prevalent back then.
Maybe.
Still a thing.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Nobody's reading the books, man.
Yeah. This first paragraph kind of gives a good overview. Now, throughout your reincarnational existences, you expand your consciousness, your ideas, your perceptions, your values. You break away from self-adopted restrictions, and you grow spiritually as you learn to step aside from limiting conceptions and dogmas. I guess that's not necessarily a strict overview of the chapter, but that's just what's happening.
Yeah, that's like the background, like, for why this whole message, like, it matters, right? Is because, like, your whole goal when you're doing, like, these iterative, like, experiences of reincarnating is you're trying to, like, shake off some of these dogmas. And, like, hatred in this instance is like a dogma.
Yeah, so, like, I'll read the next paragraph, but, like, right in that paragraph, he gets into, like, too narrow ideas are a detriment to you. And this first paragraph that I just read is kind of like the wide view that, you need to come back to from your narrow views. Your rate of learning depends entirely upon you, however. Limited, dogmatic, or rigid concepts of good and evil can hold you back. Too narrow ideas of the nature of existence can follow you through several lives if you do not choose to be spiritually and psychically flexible. These rigid ideas can indeed act like leashes. Then he goes into, just spelling it out like a dog tied to a leash.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of scary when you think they can follow you through several lives.
Yeah, I didn't realize how, like, sticky it is, like, conceptually.
Yeah.
Until, like, this chapter, where it seems like it really, like, you can really get, like, chased down sort of by limiting beliefs.
This is where I see a lot of Buddhism in this, and I see where Buddhism takes it to the extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Seth says out of all of the major religions, Buddhism came the closest.
Yeah.
But, some of the Buddhist ideology that I was given, in my meditation retreats is like, it is very strict. Like, you gotta like clean your souls, to make sure like your next life isn't worse. And then even then you have to keep doing the work, like Seth isn't quite as extreme as that.
Right.
They just take that logic to the nth degree, and which is interesting because like right here, what he's saying, two narrow ideas of the nature of existence, like even these ideas, and I feel like religions are an example of these sorts of traps, but there's like a kernel of truth that really resonates with people. But I think it's that imbalance of the intellect over the intuition that has plagued religions really. And so like that resonance gives them the righteousness to say this is true, and then they just use their intellect to take it way too far, and then it becomes restricting for them.
Yeah.
Seth did also say, I just want to point out that every religion, even though Buddhism comes the closest, every religion has its distortions and like, I guess, untruths. I think the major theme across like Christianity and Buddhism is that you as a human are tainted in some way. Like you said, clean the
Yeah.
soul, but what Seth would say, your soul is not dirty or tainted or inferior. No part of you is inferior. Each part of you plays its own role. The ego has a specific role. Like you wouldn't say my fingernail or my toe is inferior to the rest of my body and worse than the liver. You need all that.
That's a good point, because I feel like our civilization, if we're including all of those kinds of religions, is like, it's almost like there's an inherent guilt that we're told that we should have, which he doesn't get into it too deeply in here, but like can have a lot of negative effects, which I guess doesn't take that much imagination to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like early on here, he kind of taps into a lot of like sort of the like Christian undercurrent. Like he like directly references like the turn the other cheek thing, right?
Yeah. And right before that, I do see he gets right into guilt. If you form a guilt in your mind, then it is a reality for you and you must work it out. But many of you form guilts for which there are no adequate cause, and you saddle yourselves with these guilts without reason. In your dimension of activity, there will appear to be a wild assortment of evils. Let me tell you that he who hates evil merely creates another one.
I had that one written down too.
Yeah. What'd you think?
Oh, that was one of the quotes I didn't like very much.
Really?
It's like, really, Seth? Okay.
Well, it's when I look at the atrocious acts that anyone's doing and you try to understand it from their point of view, they think they're doing a good thing, usually. And that's how I get there.
I feel like this is maybe my hobby horse because I've been on this for a couple episodes now, but just like, I feel like there is some level to like what it means to be a good person, that there is like a requisite hatred of evil, you know?
Okay, but like, would you consider the stereotypical version of Jesus to be good?
See, that's the thing, is like, I feel like there's so much good in like the scriptural version of Jesus, right? Like if you actually take and read, like, I'm a big fan of like, I think, is it called the Jefferson's Bible, where he like took and like spliced out every part of the Bible except for like the Sermon on the Mount and the Hill or something like that?
I had no idea.
Basically, like, there's the idea that you can take like the Christian Bible and you can take only the parts where it's like Jesus specifically teaching a lesson and just like read that part and be like, let's just pretend I'm reading his like seminar notes, basically. And like, that's a really good version of the Bible, I think, because it's got most of the like good stuff in it. But there's like some parts of some of those sermons that are really insidious, I think.
Really? Can you give an example?
So when he talks about like lusting after people, right? He's like, oh, I'm reinterpreting the old laws, like the 10 Commandments. And like, there's one where he's like, you shouldn't covet your neighbor's wife. But like, I'm not talking about like you shouldn't go sleep with them. I'm talking about if you look upon someone lustfully, you should gouge your own eyes out, right? Which is like, to me, it seems like that's sort of denying your own psychology, you know? Like, you can't help but feel lust. So, like, to be that self-hating that you're like, I felt this emotion that I didn't act on, I need to gouge my eyes out. Like, there's something insidious there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fairly. I'm not going to argue with that example, but like, I'm wondering, like, what's the value in talking about something that's been probably re-edited and stomped upon for 2,000 years, you know? Like, I mean, to talk about the historical Jesus as if, like, these are his actual quotes is kind of silly, isn't it?
I don't know, because I think like as a society we're sort of getting away from the idea of like the great man theory, right? Where it's like it doesn't matter if one person came up with the idea, like if a collection of smart people over time edited it into something that people find compelling, then regardless of the authorial, history of it, the statements themselves stand for something,
Yeah, I'm just saying that, like, there's a lot of people believe that there's parts of the Bible, like, full-on books that have just been removed because
Right.
because the church, it disempowered the church, it empowered the individual over the church.
Oh, historically, this is just a fact.
Yeah.
Right?
What I guess what I'm saying is, like, I think it's fruitful to talk about, like, this concept, but taking it out of, like, me trying to defend something somebody supposedly said.
Well,
You know what I mean?
but part of the thing is like, what was the question that you had asked that like brought this up?
You said something I understood to mean that you think it's valid to hate evil, and I asked you, what about the stereotypical version of Jesus? Because in my mind, that stereotype of Jesus would not hate evil people.
Right.
He would just accept them and understand them.
Right. He would like forgive them right away.
Yeah,
right?
and treat them with like gentleness, which I think is what is needed to convert them from hateful, evil people into considerate,
I think you can be anti-evil without hating evil.
But you know who he didn't turn the other cheek on? Is the moneylenders. Ooh, he went nuts on them.
Yeah. But that's what I mean about using Jesus as an example. Like, there's always going to be ammunition on both sides.
Well, so this is one thing I did write down, like pretty early on here. We've got this sort of invocation of like the turn the other cheek thing.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find it.
It's in the middle of 171 or towards middle bottom.
The paragraph starts with 945.
Yeah. Now, from within your point of reference, it is often difficult for you to perceive that all events work towards creativity, or to trust in the spontaneous creativity of your own natures. Within your system, to kill is obviously a moral crime, but to kill another in punishment only compounds the original error. Someone very well known who established a church, if you will a civilization, once said, turn the other cheek if you are attacked. The original meaning of that remark, however, should be understood. You should turn the other cheek because you realize that basically the attacker only attacks himself. Then you are free, and the reaction is a good one. If you turn the other cheek without this understanding, however, and feel resentful, or if you turn the other cheek out of a feeling of pseudo-moral superiority, then the reaction is far from adequate. So that's like that thing that I think is interesting where like there's sort of like a flavor of this kind of like Christian like moral like intentionalism where it's like it's not good enough that you turn the other cheek. It's like you have to feel the right way about turning the other cheek too, right? Like you have to do it out of the right intentions, otherwise it doesn't actually work.
But you're criticizing that? Because I think
somewhat, yeah.
I think that's important because I think what he's kind of saying, the original meaning gets lost, and what people are left with a moral prescription that they don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So they're acting in this way because they're told that it's good, but they don't understand why. And the understanding is the key. And there's more quotes in this chapter that relate directly to that like, we're here to develop our understanding, And so like, we're in this drama. The act of understanding and the act of putting that understanding into action is really important to that development. And the key, I think it all hinges on what he's saying is like the attacker only attacks himself. Like that's the understanding that he's pointing to, which I think is kind of a deep well for people that are unfamiliar with that.
It is a deep well.
Yeah. Because he goes on to like stress what we need to value the individual later. Did you get to that part?
Yeah.
And that also, I think, carries that implication that implied in the valuing the individual is the valuing of all, Like, I think that's when I say that's a deep well, I think that's what we need to get to.
Yeah. Like, sort of in this chapter, like the idea of reincarnation does kind of like what you were saying with like the Buddhism thing. It's like it allows for there to be a mechanism by which actually this person's going to get their just desserts at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Because like them attacking you is actually an act of ignorance, and they will be punished for their ignorance by not being able to reincarnate with like full wisdom, right?
And if you are just the one that turns the other cheek but don't have the understanding, you're likely to be the attacker. You're just as likely to be the attacker when you find yourself in their shoes.
Right.
And he's talking later on about this. He says there's a sort of logic or something that I kind of thought was reminiscent of karma.
I thought that too, yeah.
Skipping way ahead, there's inner logic to your current relationships, attitudes, and experience. And that he goes on to share this example. If like one life you hated women, you may very well be a woman in the next life. So I think that's getting to that like turn the other cheek thing where, you know, if you don't have that understanding that goes along with that act of turning the other cheek, your higher self in between lives is going to recommend that you live the other side of that coin because you still need to learn that lesson. And so that's why hatred, even hating evil can keep you in this trap, because getting back to that, that broader view, every destructive thing that we perceive or evil thing, like from a broader view outside of time, is constructive.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the implication of this chapter.
Yeah. No, and thinking about it, like I'll admit there's for sure like value to like how it's being said, right? Like I know I talked a little bit at length last episode, right, about like this whole idea of like the Christian ethic of like superiority, right? And like how you feel like morally superior to other people and how that's so insidious. So like Seth like specifically calling out like don't have this like pseudo moral like superiority complex. Like
yeah.
No, that does like ring true, right? Like you shouldn't be walking around like feeling like you're just better than other people for your moral beliefs.
Where do you think that comes from in Christianity? Like, is it stuff like we're made in the image of God kind of stuff? Or
I mean, there was the whole Crusades and all that. Like, everyone who isn't Christian is literally worse and deserves to be killed.
Right, but like what was motivating like that, for example? Like, is there something specifically in... I'm sure there's plenty of things in the Bible that people can grab onto and distort or are already distorted.
Do you have an idea?
Wasn't there that thing? I mean, this is what made me turn away from Christianity when I was younger, was when I heard that God would just doom everyone who wasn't Christian to hell. So like Muslims, Jewish people, Native people who have never been exposed to like the modern cultures of the world. I was like, so you're going to create all these children in your image and just throw them away? Like, it sounds kind of abusive.
Yeah. I don't have enough knowledge of the Bible. I was just asking that as an open-ended question, like, where does that come from? But I think that's, you saying that makes me think, there's probably a lot of stuff, like, especially in the Old Testament.
And I mean, the whole theme of, if you're a good Christian, you get to go to heaven, everybody else just doesn't.
Yeah.
You get invited to this exclusive club and forget everybody else.
I know there's even a quote, it might be like right away in Genesis, and I'd always hear this from people that like wanted weed legalized, like back in the 90s. They're like, that God made everything for us to use, all the plants and animals. It's a long poetic, Bible verse saying like for man to use.
Jah made the herb.
Yeah. That's what it says.
But like, I guess my answer to your question would be like, I think that this is like a feature of religions that have sort of like an afterlife balancing sort of mechanism built in. That like, if you think at the end of all of this, like there's angels up there keeping tallies, right? Like at the end of all this, if you lived a good life, but like you were thrown out on the street and you were a beggar and people abused you, but like you kept the faith, you're going to be rewarded.
Yeah.
And like this person who had everything they could have ever wanted in life, but they were a prick is going to get punished. Like that breeds sort of a psychology, right? Of like, that's how you're going to look at people, is you're like, my recompense in this life is that I get to feel morally superior to you, as opposed to like other kinds of ethics where you're like, well, my recompense for your bad actions is we're going to beat you up, right? Like we're going to grab you and we're going to like torture you. And like in doing that torture, that's how I feel better, right? Or I'm going to take all your stuff and I'm going to have all the good stuff right now, right here in the physical world. And that's how I'm going to feel better. But like Christianity doesn't give you that. It gives you the like, in the hypothetical afterlife, that's where I get my just desserts, you know? So like, what are you left with right now? The knowledge of that.
Yeah, those are good points. And as you're saying that, I'm like, just like shaking my head at like how shitty humanity has been. But like, that brings me back to like the hating of evil. Like all of that is done out of this idea of righteousness. Like, you know, like whether it's like punishing someone in this life or thinking they're going to be punished forever in an afterlife. Like who comes up with the idea that like, oh, wait till this life is over and we actually add up the points, as we were talking about a game earlier, you know?
Right.
Like it's the person that feels righteousness, like that justice isn't happening in this life. And it's caught in this idea that justice means like somebody that's doing something bad should be hurt for that.
Mm-hmm.
And our societies still operate this way. But I think when we look at our own children, which is, you know, the people we have legitimately the most empathy for, a lot of people nowadays aren't trying to hurt their child for doing something wrong. They have this deep understanding of like it's done out of ignorance. You know, Johnny didn't hit Timmy because he's evil. It's because he just doesn't understand. We don't apply that same wisdom or empathy to adults in our civilization generally.
Yeah. Or even like the idea like that it couldn't even necessarily always be ignorance, but just like the idea now of like, what's it called? Like punishing people after the fact is retributive justice, right? But like, what's the one that people want to do now? It's like restorative justice or something like that.
Yeah, but is that related? I mean, that's not like an opposite, is it?
No, it's like the similar thing where it's like, now we know like, oh, you shouldn't be like hitting kids for doing something wrong because they just like don't know. They're just like ignorant. But then also there's the idea of like things that we used to say like so-and-so did this crime because they're evil. Now we can look at it and be like, so-and-so did this crime because they took an assessment of the situation they were in and they realized that doing this crime is necessary to their survival.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like restoring them into society is better than just punishing them for the quote unquote evil thing that they did. Right.
Right.
And note to the attentive listener, Seth specifically comes out against the death penalty in this book. Right. Like it was in the quote that we already read. Like if someone kills someone, killing them back just adds an error, Seth says, into the system.
And I want to just add, I think we should remember there's different levels of ignorance when it comes to doing a crime. I might know it's wrong to like hit you, but like it still could be done out of ignorance when I'm like ignorant about just what he's saying here, that like, you know, this is hurting me as much as it's hurting you, you know, like that's the part I think we do get tripped up on, and we try to like, you know, we understand we have to do something in our society when somebody's hurting somebody, but like deciding what is kind of where we get caught up.
I hesitate to conscribe onto like using ignorance in terms of like criminality, just because I think that sort of has like historical like issues with it, where like a lot of times people who are like seen as criminal elements in society are also sort of like racialized and also like infantilized in ways where it's like they as a category are seen as ignorant. And I think that's like really harmful to like understanding why crime happens and like why groups of people.
So the non-racist thing would be to just punish them.
No, it's just to like recognize that like they're probably not acting out of ignorance. They're probably acting out of a complete like reasonable knowledge of the system.
I guess I didn't spell out an example too far, but like like someone knows it's wrong to hit the other person, but they don't understand how to deal with their anger, and they don't understand where their anger comes from. Like that's kind of what I'm getting to. There's an ignorance at that level, and so if you can help them like understand, like, oh, from the outside I see like this emotion has engulfed you and taken control of you, and then we can talk to him, and then he can understand, like, oh, my anger actually comes from the way my father treated me when I was a child. Like there's that like deep psychological ignorance is what I'm talking about, which I think doesn't need to be racialized.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Just like when you're talking about crime statistics.
Yeah.
In our culture, that tends to just be what comes up.
Yeah, and I mean, I work with people that are committed as mentally ill and dangerous, and so like I guess my go-to examples are more along those lines than, like a prison system, which we would label strictly as criminals. But I think if I worked in that environment, I would have a similar insight to like how they actually are. I don't think I would be walking around saying like, oh, those people are criminals and we're non-criminals.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Getting deep right off the bat.
I thought it was interesting. Seth talks about, you got to be careful because like if you hate someone enough, you might end up reincarnating together. Like you might end up being siblings or something,
I see the micro examples, the truth in the micro example of that. Like when you have a hate, you're holding a bond. Mm-hmm. You're holding an emotional bond, and you have to work through it if you want to let go of that. So to me, it makes perfect sense, if you do believe in reincarnation, that same dynamic could work at that level.
Isn't there like a poetic quote about that? Like, hate is not the opposite of love.
Yeah, it's apathy.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why, like, if you're like have kind of like a bitter breakup situation, it's always the bigger burn if your ex is like, I don't hate you. I don't even care about you.
Yeah, I don't even think about you.
Fuck.
Yeah.
That's the bigger burn.
It hurts more, right?
Because they're basically saying like, I don't have an emotional bond on you one way or the other. You don't matter to me.
Right, yeah. And I think like Seth picks up a lot on this, right? That like to be feeling these sort of like negative emotions. And I guess it's sort of like is sort of in the Buddhist sense. It's like the intensity of the attachment, I guess a Buddhist would say, right? Yeah. The attachment is what matters about it. Like whether it's a positive or a negative attachment, it's just like there is this attachment. And when you reincarnate, the attachments will play a part in like where you end up, sort of.
Yeah. I was going to get more into that too from this chapter, just the parallels between Buddhism and this stuff. And yeah, in the Pali language, which is the dialect of Sanskrit that the Buddha spoke, the attachments are called sankharas, and they're usually labeled in our system of opposites as like desires and aversions. So like the extreme end of an aversion would be hate.
Mm-hmm.
So we're already using that sort of terminology, but they take that label, attachment, and I think it's illustrative, but by saying that everything in this broad spectrum fits as an attachment, you can see how like you can categorize everything that is attaching you to this cycle of reincarnation as negative, and you have to like then spend all your existences scrubbing them away.
Right, yeah. The spectrum becomes attachment versus disattachment rather than like hate and love.
Yeah. And that's the obsessive nature, and Seth warns against, being too obsessed even with, that's what the perfectionist is doing, or any of our versions where you can see there's like, a perfectionist has probably good intentions, right? But they're just like too obsessive. They're taking it too far for some reason.
Yeah, like the high-level Buddhist monk will never tell you they're trying to get to nirvana, right? They've already given up on it.
Well, like how obsessed are you and like how can you operate that way without having a strong attachment to having this, light soul of clean of attachments? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The desire to want nothing is kind of a oxymoron, right?
I wonder, I was going to bring this up, but maybe this is the right time to do it. Like, I wonder if you think like the sort of downstream of a lot of like kind of this reincarnation attachment stuff in Seth would end up prescribing a sort of like Taoism, where it's like very like, because you were talking before about like you're trying to avoid sort of like being hyper intellectual about like thinking about how to do things and like planning it out and like focusing on stuff that way. And like I wonder if it would sort of prescribe a much more just sort of like go with the flow, just let things be what they are, don't attach good or evil to them, just sort of like do whatever comes up and just like see that as like your sort of like purpose and role. Am I getting sort of like the Taoist take on stuff right?
You might have a better handle on it than me. I mean, I've read into it a long time ago. I know what you're saying, and I think you could.
Because like Taoism's all about like naturalness, right?
Yeah. I think you could use that as a way to live a healthy life, but I don't know if like, I feel like Seth has obviously recommended exactly what he thinks.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say something else, but I think I lost it. What do you think?
Can I read this really long quote from
Please.
Nature of Personal Reality? Okay,
Yeah.
it's really long. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It's about love and hate. And I think I've read this before, but I'll read it again. Love, therefore, can contain hate very nicely. Hatred can contain love and be driven by it, particularly by an idealized love. You hate something that separates you from a loved object. It is precisely because the object is loved that it is so disliked if expectations are not met. You may love a parent and the parent does not seem to return the love and denies your expectations, then you may hate the same parent because of the love that leads you to expect more. The hatred is meant to get you your love back. It is supposed to lead to a communication from you stating your feelings, clearing the air, so to speak, and bringing you closer to the loved object. Hatred is not the denial of love then, but an attempt to regain it and a painful recognition of the circumstances that separate you from it. In the same way, it's possible to love your fellow human beings on a grand scale while at times hating them precisely because they so often seem to fall short of that love. When you rage against humanity, it's because you love it. To deny the existence of hate, then, is to deny love. It is not that these emotions are opposites. And then later on, he goes on to say, love and hate are both based upon self-identification in your experience. You do not bother to love or hate persons you cannot identify with at all. They leave you relatively untouched. They do not elicit deep emotion. Which I would agree with.
Yeah.
Like, when I read that last bit, I think of how, like, when I find out that people are doing heinous things to each other, I get really angry. But then when I find out that, like, orcas are out here throwing seals around, baby seals around and killing them, I'm just like, well,
That's just how orcas be.
yeah, I mean, they're called killer whales for a reason. Like, whenever you do your whales shit.
That's good. The part that caught me that I almost was going to say that like hate, because there's other parts where he's talking about something is a psychological reality and something isn't, or psychological reality isn't quite exactly the term he uses. But he's saying that hate is real as this kind of signal that we love something and something's wrong with that love, or it's taken away.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. And this distortion that he's talking about here in this book, that hatred is used to kind of perpetuate more hate and harm. That's where we get caught up in that vicious cycle.
Right.
Yeah, I think from the simplest, like, Sethian perspective, there's that quote, that really famous one, you get what you concentrate upon.
Mm-hmm.
Hate something is to focus, like, really intensely, with emotion and vivid imagination, what you don't like about something.
Yeah.
Which, if you are a god in kindergarten, this is the worst thing you could do for yourself, because you're just going to bring more of what you don't like into your reality.
Yeah, and it's going along with this theme of two narrow ideas that will follow you. Like, so when I feel like I get caught up in hate or just some version of, negative emotion, it's like when you like type up this nasty email and then you're like, oh, I know I should just, wait a day and reread this. That space of time is getting out of that narrowness, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were able to step back from the narrowness of the hate, appreciate a larger view, realize that this isn't constructive. Like that's just an instance where we actually recognize that like we do give too much credence to this idea of justice and, like retribution of punishment.
Yeah, I find that so interesting. Like in like because we were talking like before we started the pod about sort of like doing diagnoses and like understanding like where you are relative to like sort of what's it called? Sort of like psychological normativity, right? And like it's always really interesting to me that like part of like the autism diagnosis is like this sort of like hyperfixation on justice, you know? Because like you wouldn't ever, well, it just seems like something like from the received perspective of the culture, like having a deep love, I guess, or a deep like feeling of desire towards things being just seems like a good quality, right?
I'm sorry, are you saying that people with autism tend to focus on justice?
Yeah.
Really? I've never heard of that before.
Maybe like this is just like a perceived thing that I've had on it, but like for one of the like trends that I've sort of noticed is I thought that was sort of like considered a part of like sort of like an autistic trait is like being hyper focused with like justice and making sure things are like fair and stuff like that.
I would want to ask, is that an inherent symptom of autism, or is that just how it would present in a neurotypical world where autism, the traits of autism are labeled as bad, like you suck at communication, you know, like you're too unusual, whatever. And then so the people who become aware that they have autism feel like they were treated unfairly by the world, and that's their fixation, not that it's a specific trait of autism itself. Like, you know, feminism is not really a specific trait of being a woman. It's just a natural reaction to women being oppressed for decades and now being
treated unfairly.
Yeah.
So
women aren't all like super like fairness. Inherently, like if you were to imagine another world where women were on top and it was the matriarchy instead, I don't even know if feminism would really exist.
No, yeah.
The same way.
I agree, yeah. No, like I think that is a really good insight where like potentially that could just be like it's a symptom of having to exist in neurotypical society to focus on justice.
Yeah.
It's like people talk about how like presidents tend to have a higher percentage of left-handed people than than the general population.
Really?
Yeah, it's like 50-50 or something like that.
Whoa.
Right.
That's pretty crazy.
Wait, why?
The theory behind it is they say it's because if you are a left-handed person, you have to experience all the injustices of being left-handed in a right-handed society, and that inspires you to like think differently about like the world.
And to want to change things.
Right.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Want to change things and accept like a short end of the stick, sort of like wisdom kind of.
Well, you can think about like it's like a difference of experience, but a difference of experience that doesn't really hamper your ability to attain power in society in any like measurable way, right? Whereas like people with other disabilities do have like a power imbalance, you know, where it's like it's actually harder for them to like achieve power.
The left-handed person just has to think about it more.
They just have to think about it.
That's so interesting. Because I was just like, well, growing up Asian, you do get treated differently. And yet there is that problem of Asians just in terms of leadership, like positions that they hold, is just the percentage is super low.
Right. Because there's a structural like limitation.
Or a psychological one, or a cultural one. I don't know.
Or cultural, right, exactly.
I think this is also interesting in the context of when we're talking about in between lives and you're going to choose your next life. You might be like, maybe you'll be left-handed this life. Just
Jimi Hendrix did it.
Yeah. Just to gain that little extra insight, you know, just stuff like that. This jumps off a little bit of a tangent, but our most recent book club, one of our friends brought up a podcast about
the telepathy types.
Telepathy types, yeah. Did you check that out at all?
Only like the first 30 minutes. I do intend to listen to the rest of it.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, though.
Yeah, there was a part that I found fascinating. Basically, the premise of the podcast is like there's certain nonverbal children with autism that seem to have like hardcore telepathy, especially with their mothers, it seems like. Because one had a connection with their mother that they were getting like close to 100% of things, and it was like 0% with the father, which is strange. But when they asked the child would say because the mother gave them permission or something.
I thought
Was
I could be wrong, but I remember that it was that she trusts the mother more.
Or the mother believed that telepathy worked.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember hearing that and being like, oh boy, how does the father feel listening to this podcast? Like, if I were the father, I'd be hurt and feel like I let my daughter down.
Yeah.
What was fascinating though is like they would keep asking the nonverbal autistic child these questions, and there was some very Sethian answers coming through.
Big time.
It might have been on like the second episode or something, but like that child claimed that they didn't know that they had a body.
Wow.
Which is insane. But like I'm imagining this and they're like, from the Sethian point of view, everything is mental. We're manifesting physical life. This is just a calcification, like a strong signal that appears to be physical, and so much so that we're like deluding ourselves that it's strictly physical. But like the child needed to be like actually touched and had to like painstakingly like learn their body.
Interesting.
Like one of them couldn't really even use a keyboard unless like the mother was like holding their forearm just to like, remind them that their arm existed. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, especially since during yesterday's book club, we had read that part about the boy who was sick and did not, quote, relate to physical reality very well.
That was also fascinating. I want to know more about that.
I mean, one could possibly describe these children who forget that they have bodies as people who don't relate to physical reality.
Yeah. So to put that in a nutshell, it was Rob's first cousin, that needed some energy, and his dad, Rob's dad gifted what it would have been, I think was it a male cousin?
Yeah.
His nephew gifted his nephew his energy, or some of his energy. And Seth was saying like at someday, like Rob's dad would ask for that energy back at some point. Presumably the nephew would have like learned how to ask for their own energy from their entity, which Seth claims is always available. And he said there might be like an illness during that transition period. But I thought it was so fascinating. And you know what it made me think of? Like a few pods back where Seth was talking about he just gave 3 vocations, and there was the creator, the teacher, and the healer. And I was like, I wonder what a healer is in this context. And I think it might have something to do with like that lending of energy to someone. I'm sure there's a lot more that goes with it. And even then we were talking about they all kind of overlap a lot, but I wonder if Seth would have said like his dad maybe is a healer in that sense.
Could be.
So is there, inside of the Sethian tradition, is there people who take on the vocation of like energy healing? Like, do the like lay hands on people and like give them energy thing?
I don't think so.
Never mentioned anything like that, but like that's why I was so curious about what was implied when he said healer.
Right.
In that.
I feel like teacher and healer must have a huge overlap, because Seth literally says illness comes from basically your beliefs, or having like mental actions that are just discordant with what it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think when we were verbally reaching for the answer to that question, then I think we kind of settled on like therapy, where that was the crossover between teacher and healer is our version of therapy.
But I also think that creator and healer are super entwined too, because when we think of the story of the Arab man who couldn't reconcile Moses versus Allah, to get past that, he had to, like, Seth and his friend had to put on basically a play, and that to me is like creation. You're creating this play, you're creating these scenes, and you have to act it out really creatively to get this guy to move beyond his limiting beliefs and see like just a wider breadth of reality.
Yeah, I think there's no way around that. You have to have like skills of all 3 to specialize in one. Interesting.
It's like that episode in Dan where the one chick was like dying, and then the ghost from the like ballet dancer puts all her energy in her so that she could like not die.
Yeah, was it her like daughter or something, or
no? The ghost like thought it like mistook her for her daughter. because like she saw the ghost and like thought it was her mom, so they like made a bond. But then she was like dying, and the ghost like, I'm gonna put all my spirit energy into her so she doesn't die.
I really hope we have like at least 10% of our audience gets that reference, but I don't know if we will.
We're dating the podcast really bad by me bringing up. I should have talked about Dragon Ball Z. That's timeless. Dan, like that's very one. That's this year only.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie, when Seth was talking about capital punishment, I was like, should I mention Luigi maybe or not?
Oh, are they trying to kill him now?
Well, like some weeks ago, they made it possible because they charged him with like a federal crime. Because they count in New York, they said this could count as terrorism, which might be. I mean, this is my understanding, but which could lead to capital sentence, but I don't.
So we have a death penalty on the federal level? I didn't know that.
I don't.
For certain things we do, like
terrorism.
For like, I don't know about maybe terrorism. I know that people were bringing it up a little while back because they were saying that like technically, what's it called? Insurrection.
Yeah.
Like technically insurrection you can get the death penalty for.
I guess that makes sense. We're like anti-death penalty except if you try to overthrow us.
Yeah, it's like one of those like organizational self-preservation like things, you know, where it's like, yeah, we're gonna try to have a justice system that's like really just. Unless you try to take down the system, we will just murder you.
The highest crime in this society is taking our power away.
Yeah, exactly.
That's our show, but fear not, the never-ending conversation continues next week. If you're enjoying the show, please be so kind as to subscribe, like, rate, and review, and if you're feeling frisky, tell a friend. Contact us at implicatingthereal@gmail.com. You can support the show at patreon.com/implicatingthereal. We are doing our best, but whatever support you can lend helps us appreciably. We are not affiliated with the publishers or proprietors, but we encourage you to get the books. You can follow along as we endeavor to dive deep into the Sethian worldview, and there's really nothing like cultivating your own relationship with the material. Until next week, we wish you a fond good evening.